Welcome back to the deep dive. Honestly, today is going to be a little different. Usually we're looking at something tangible.
Right, like supply chains or AI.
Exactly, things you can touch or at least see on a screen. But
Yeah.
today, we are going way off the map.
We really are. We're standing at the absolute edge of reality here.
Yeah, and if you're listening to that rhythmic, pulsing synth texture right now in the background.
Which is very cool, by the way. It blends those organic echoes with almost this precision-engineered electronic sound.
Right, it's our cue. That's the sound of the cosmic riddle. Because today, we're tackling the fundamental structure of reality.
The biggest question there is.
I want you to picture something with me, and I want you to really try to visualize this, because if you do it right, it's actually kind of terrifying.
Okay, I'm ready.
Dominoes.
Dominoes. Like the game.
Like the chain reaction. You've seen those videos where people set up thousands of them in a gym?
Oh, yeah. Click, click, click. One knocks over the next. It's incredibly satisfying to watch.
Sure, it's cause and effect in its purest form. Now, imagine a line of dominoes falling. You see one fall, which knocks over the next one, which knocks over the next.
Take standard physics.
Right. But now, in your mind, I want you to look backward down the line. You want to see who pushed the first one, right?
Naturally, you look for the finger that tipped the first tile.
Exactly. That's human instinct. But here is the riddle. Imagine that line of dominoes extends backward forever.
Yeah, forever.
Infinite. There is no first tile.
Wow.
The dominoes have been falling for all of eternity. There was never a moment where they weren't falling. There was never a start. Just an endless clicking sound stretching back into a dark void that never, ever ends.
That is, that's actually a dizzying image. It makes you feel a bit unmoored.
It gives me vertigo just thinking about it. And that feeling, that exact vertigo, that is the heart of the tension we are exploring in today's deep dive. We are looking at one of the biggest, loudest, most aggressive debates in the history of human thought, the cosmological argument.
The question at the beginning, did it happen? Did it need to happen?
Yeah.
Or has the universe just always been shuffling its feet?
And we've got a serious heavyweight fight on our hands today based on the sources we're digging into. On one side, we have the modern empiricist's proposition. We're going to be looking closely at the work of a philosopher named Quentin Smith.
Brilliant thinker.
Very brilliant. He proposes something called the half-open door theory.
Which is a fascinating, mind-bending way of looking at time itself.
It really is. He's essentially arguing for that infinite line of dominoes. He says, look, if you look at the math, maybe there is no first instant of time. Maybe there is no t equals zero.
Right.
Maybe we just have an infinite series of moments getting closer and closer to zero, but never touching it. And if that's true, does the universe actually need a creator?
Right. It's the theory of a self-caused universe. A universe that lifts itself up by its own bootstraps. It doesn't need a push from the outside because the push comes from the inside forever.
But then, crashing into that idea, we have the rationalists' counter. And this comes from a very different tradition. We're digging into classical Islamic rationalism, specifically this concept of Kun Fa-Yakoon.
And it is.
And it is. And I know, for some people, that sounds like, I don't know, a magic spell.
Yeah.
Like a wizard in a pointy hat just snapping his fingers.
It can definitely sound that way if you don't look at the structural argument underneath it. But the rationalist argument from our sources is that the half-open door still requires a frame.
Explain that.
Well, you can't have falling dominoes without gravity, without a floor, without the dominoes themselves existing.
So the argument is that the divine decree isn't a wizard snapping his fingers to break the laws of physics. It's the launch code that allows physics to exist in the first place.
Precisely. It's the difference between the silent void and the activation of the system. We're going to move from the idea of an infinite regress, which, as you said, is terrifyingly silent and cold, to the concept of architectural justice.
Architectural justice. I like that phrase.
A blazing light of intention.
So our mission today is pretty straightforward, even if the topic is massive. We are analyzing the cosmological argument. We're pitting modern atheistic cosmology against classical Islamic rationalism.
And we should clarify for the listener, this isn't just about dusting off old theology books.
No.
This is about the fundamental structure of reality. We are debating infinite regress versus a necessary being.
Right.
Is the universe a closed loop, or is it a building under construction?
Let's dive in. And I want to start where our source material suggests with the mood. The source text opens with a poem, The Cosmic Riddle, and it paints this picture of standing under a canopy of stars.
It's a nice grounding image.
It is. Have you ever done that? Just stood somewhere really dark, away from the city lights, and looked up?
Oh, absolutely. Out in the desert once, the scale of it absolutely crushes you.
It really does. And your instinctive question when you see that sprawling expanse isn't, how does nuclear fusion work in a star?
No, you're not doing math in that moment.
Right. The instinctive question is, how did this emerge from silence?
It's the shock of existence. Philosophers call it the question of contingency. Why is there something rather than nothing?
And that brings us to the definition of the cosmological argument. I want to keep this simple for now. In its most basic form, it says, each thing that is has a cause. Therefore, since the universe is, it must have a first uncaused beginning.
It sounds intuitive. It feels like common sense. If I see a ball rolling across the floor, I assume someone kicked it. I don't assume the ball just decided to roll or that it has been rolling for all eternity.
Right. But historically, this common sense has been a total battlefield. And if we look at the history here, in Western education anyway, we usually hear about Thomas Aquinas.
The heavyweight of medieval Christian philosophy.
Yeah. He had his 5 ways of proving God's existence. He talked about motion, causation. Basically, he argued you cannot just have an infinite chain of movers. If I move a stick with my hand, the stick moves the stone. But if there's no hand...
The stick doesn't move. You need a prime mover.
But interestingly, and I didn't fully realize this until we dug into these sources, a lot of the heavy lifting on this specific argument, specifically about the absolute beginning of the universe, actually comes from the Islamic tradition. They call it the Kalam Cosmological Argument.
Yes. Kalam literally means speech or discourse in Arabic.
Mm-hmm.
But historically, it became the specific term for Islamic scholastic theology.
Yeah.
We're talking about thinkers like Al-Kindi and the absolute titan here, Al-Ghazali.
Okay, tell me about Al-Ghazali, because I've heard the name, but usually in the context of spirituality or mysticism. Was he doing hardcore physics?
In a way, yes. He was fighting a very specific intellectual war in the 11th century.
Right.
He wasn't fighting atheists in the modern sense. Pretty much everyone back then believed in some kind of divinity. He was fighting the Aristotelians.
The followers of Aristotle,
Yeah, right.
Greek philosophers.
The Aristotle believed in an eternal universe. He thought the universe had just always been here. Matter was eternal. Time was eternal. Al-Ghazali looked at that and said, that is metaphysically untenable.
Metaphysically untenable. That's a very polite academic way of saying garbage.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
His logic was that you cannot traverse an infinite past.
Okay, let's unpack that phrase, traversing the infinite, because that breaks my brain a little bit.
Think of it this way. Imagine you want to come visit me, but before you can knock on my door, you have to knock on the door of the person before you.
Okay.
And before them, the person before them.
So chain of houses.
Right. Now, if there is an infinite line of people you have to visit before you get to me, when do you arrive at my house?
Never. I'd be knocking on doors forever.
Exactly. You can never finish an infinite series. So, Al-Ghazali argued, if the past is truly infinite, if there were an infinite number of days before today, how did we ever arrive at today?
Whoa.
Right. To get to now, the universe had to finish the past. But you can't finish an infinity. Therefore, the past cannot be infinite. It must have had a starting point.
So just by the pure fact that we are sitting here right now, having this conversation, looking at the clock that proves the universe had a birthday.
Precisely. That was Al-Ghazali's core contribution to this. He used pure logic to prove the universe had to have a finite beginning.
Okay, so that's the medieval version. Fast forward to today, and we have the philosopher William Lane Craig. He essentially took Al-Ghazali's homework, polished it up for a modern Western audience, and gave us this famous, really tight syllogism.
The modern Kalam argument.
Yeah, it goes exactly like this. Premise 1, everything that begins to exist has a cause. Premise 2, the universe began to exist. Conclusion, therefore, the universe has a cause.
It looks watertight. It's very elegant.
It looks simple, almost too simple. And that is exactly where the sharpened blades of the critics come in. Because if you are an atheist cosmologist today, you don't just roll over and accept premise number 2.
Right, that the universe began to exist. That's where they attack.
They start poking holes, and this is where it gets really interesting and where the physics gets deep. We have to introduce Quentin Smith.
A brilliant philosopher of time and physics.
He formulated the Kalam Cosmological Arguments for atheism. He basically takes the weapon and points it the other way.
He flips the script completely.
So Smith looks at the Big Bang and says, not so fast. His core objection is that the universe is self-caused. It doesn't need an external agent. And to do this, he attacks the very idea of T equals 0.
Okay, we need to clarify T equals 0 for the listener. In standard Big Bang cosmology, T equals 0 is the singularity.
The point of infinite density.
Right. Everything in the entire universe squashed into a single point with zero volume and infinite heat. Smith argues, and frankly, a lot of quantum physicists agree with him, that a true physical first instant at T equals 0 is nonsensical.
Why is it nonsensical?
Because the math completely breaks down. Infinite density isn't a physical state you can measure. It's a sign that your theory has stopped working. It's basically a mathematical error message. So Smith says, physically, you can't have a T equals 0. It doesn't exist.
There's no T equals 0 if there's no first moment. What is there? How does the universe start?
Smith proposes something called the half-open interval.
Okay, I'm going to need you to explain this to me like I'm 5 years old. Half-open interval.
All right. Imagine a runner. He wants to start a race. But before he can start, let's look at the timeline. Imagine you are moving backward in time toward the Big Bang. You pass 1 second after the Big Bang.
Okay.
Then you go back to 0.5 seconds. Then 0.25 seconds. Then 0.125.
Okay, I see where this is going. You're just having the time.
Right. You can keep dividing that number in half forever.
Like Zeno's paradox. You walk halfway to the wall, then halfway again, and you get closer and closer, but you never actually touch the wall.
Exactly. In Smith's mathematical model, the universe encompasses that interval, greater than 0, up to now. But it never includes 0.
So wait, there is no first instant.
Correct. For any instant you point to, say, 1/trillionth of a second after the Big Bang, Smith says, I can show you a moment for that, 2/trillionth of a second.
And before that?
1/4 trillionth. And so on, infinitely.
So even though the universe has only been around for 13.8 billion years, which is a finite number inside that very first second, there is an infinite number of past moments.
Exactly. That's the half-open door. The door is open, but you can never actually find the threshold.
Okay, that is trippy, but how does that get rid of God? I mean, how does that negate the cosmological argument?
Well, Smith argues, if there is no first instant, then there is no moment where God needed to intervene. Every single state of the universe is caused by a preceding state within that interval. State A is caused by state B is caused by state C.
And since you can go back forever into those microscopic fractions of a second, you never run out of previous states.
Precisely. The universe is internally causal. It's a closed loop. He argues you don't need an external push because every moment has a predecessor inside the universe itself.
That is slippery. It's clever. It's like saying, I didn't start the fire, the spark before the fire started, and the heat before the spark started that, but you never admit there was a match.
Right. And Smith goes even further. He talks about the self-instantiation of laws.
Sounds technical.
It's the set theory argument. He says, look, the universe is just a collection of events, a set. He argues that a set is just an abstraction. It's a mental category we use to group things, like a library.
Okay, a library.
If I explain where every single book in the library came from, this one came from a donor, this one was bought at a store, this one was found on the street, do I also need to explain where the library came from?
Smith would say no.
Right. He says the library is just the word we use for the collection of books. If the parts are explained, the whole is explained. Since every moment in the universe is explained by a previous moment, the universe itself doesn't need a separate cause.
I see the logic. It's very appealing if you want to keep things neat and tidy without bringing in anything supernatural. And this leads to the big conceptual tension the atheists always raise. They ask, if everything needs a cause, why is God exempt?
The classic who created God question.
Yeah. It feels like a gotcha. They say, you religious types say everything needs a cause, then you say God doesn't. That's cheating.
It's the charge of special pleading. They argue that positing an uncaused God is just shifting the mystery back one step. Why not just stop at the universe? Why add an extra layer of complexity?
And they might point to the multiverse, right? Or Nietzsche's eternal return cycles ever turning as alternative models where you don't need a definitive beginning, just a universe that breathes in and out forever.
Exactly. So that is the atheist fortress, the half-open door, no first moment, infinite internal causes, no need for a creator.
It sounds strong. Honestly, hearing it laid out like that, it sounds very convincing mathematically. But we promised to fight. Let's bring in the rationalist response. How do we break this infinite loop? Because my brain is telling me something is wrong with the idea of a runner who never starts running.
Well, the rationalist drawing on that Kalam tradition looks at Smith's half-open door and says, that is some beautiful math.
Yeah.
But it doesn't work in the real world because of the massive difference between abstract numbers and concrete reality. You can divide numbers infinitely in your head. You can say 0.000001 forever. But can you divide time or matter infinitely in the real physical world?
Physics suggests no. We have things like Planck time.
Right. Planck time is the smallest measurable unit of time. Physics hits a pixelated wall. You can't just keep dividing forever. Real-world actual infinities create paradoxes.
But there's a stronger argument here, isn't there? One from our sources that doesn't even rely on quantum mechanics, but just on a simple cup of coffee.
Ah, yes.
Entropy.
Let's talk about entropy, because this seems to be the absolute killer for the eternal universe idea.
The entropy argument is devastating. It's based on the second law of thermodynamics. This law states that in a closed system, and the universe is, by definition, a closed system, entropy, or disorder, always increases over time.
Usable energy runs out. Things cool down. Things break down. Think of a hot cup of coffee sitting in a room. Over time, the heat from the coffee spreads out into the room. The coffee gets cold. An energy equilibrium is reached.
And you can't reverse it. The coffee never spontaneously gets hot again.
Exactly. Now, apply that to the entire universe. The universe is full of hot coffee stars burning, galaxies moving. We have active, usable energy everywhere. If the past were truly infinite, if the universe had been here forever,
The coffee would be cold by now.
exactly. If you had an infinite amount of time before today, the universe would have reached heat death or maximum entropy eons ago. Everything would be dark, cold, dead, and uniform. There would be no burning stars.
But we look around and we see the sun, we see nuclear fusion, we see life.
Which means the battery hasn't been running forever. It must have been fully charged at some point in the finite past. Therefore, it is greater than zero. There was a beginning. The clock was wound up.
That feels much more tangible than the half-open interval. You can argue about dividing seconds in your head all day, but you can't argue with a burning star. So the rationalist argues that Smith's model is a mathematical trick that completely ignores the physical reality of energy decay.
Correct. It confuses a mathematical concept with physical reality.
Now, I want to bring in a logical framework mentioned in the sources. It's from a thinker named Hamza Andreas Sortzes. He breaks down the options for the origin of the universe into 4 distinct possibilities. And I really like this because it forces you to choose a lane.
It's a classic process of elimination. Option 1. The universe was created from nothing. Option 2. The universe created itself. Option 3. The universe was created by something else created. Option 4. The universe was created by something uncreated.
Let's run through them. I'll play the skeptic. Option 1, created from nothing. Why not?
Well, define nothing.
No matter, no energy, no time, no space, just null, the absolute absence of anything.
Then it's completely illogical. 0 plus 0 equals 0. Nothing has no potentiality. It has no power. It has no properties. You can't get a universe out of absolute non-existence. As the song says, nothing comes from nothing.
Fair enough. Okay, option 2. Self-created. This is what Smith was kind of hinting at with his self-instantiation. Why can't the universe just create itself?
Because that's a logical paradox. Think about it. To create yourself, you have to do the act of creating.
Right.
But to do anything, you have to exist first.
Right.
So to create yourself, you would have to exist before you existed.
That's like a mother giving birth to herself. It's a loop that makes 0 sense when you actually say it out loud.
It's a violation of basic logic.
Okay, option 3. Created by something else created. Maybe we're in simulation. Maybe higher dimensional aliens built us.
That's a very popular one today. Tech billionaires love the simulation theory, but that just kicks the can down the road. If we are in a computer, who built the computer? And if that creator was created by someone else, who created them?
We're right back to the infinite line of dominoes.
Exactly. And as we established with Al-Ghazali earlier, an infinite regress doesn't actually explain the origin. It just defers it forever. You never get to the start.
Which leaves option 4.
Created by something uncreated. Logic forces us into this corner. There must be a terminus, a stopper, something that has the power to create, but does not itself need creating.
And this brings us back to Smith's set theory. Remember, he said, if I explain the books, I explain the library. The rationalist says, not quite.
Right. The rationalist critique here is very sharp, they say. Just because you could describe a chain of events mathematically doesn't explain why the chain exists at all. Math describes structure. It doesn't breathe fire into the equations.
There's a great analogy here from the deep dive sources about a novel.
Yes.
Yeah.
Imagine a long novel. I can explain that Chapter 2 flows logically from Chapter 1, and the actions of the hero in Chapter 10 are caused by the villain in Chapter 9. The internal logic of the plot is perfect. But does explaining the plot explain the existence of the physical book?
No, the characters didn't write themselves. They didn't print the pages.
Exactly. Describing the internal chain of causality, the dominoes falling, doesn't explain the existence of the dominoes or the gravity that pulls them down. Smith's sets are just descriptions. They aren't agents. They can't do anything.
And the source quotes the Quran here, specifically Surah 52, verse 35. It asks this exact question. Were they created by nothing, or were they the creators of themselves?
It's a rhetorical challenge that cuts right through the abstraction. It forces you to confront the agency problem. If the universe is just a set of falling numbers, who wrote the numbers?
This is the perfect bridge to our next section. We've talked about the logic, we've beaten up the math a bit. Now I want to talk about the mechanism. We've established the rational need for an uncreated creator. But how does that creator act? This is where we get into Kun Fa-Yakoon.
Be and it is.
In the source material, there's a section on reinterpreting the word. It connects the biblical phrase, "In the beginning was the word," with the Islamic concept of the divine decree.
The word here, or the command, is the bridge between the metaphysical and the physical. The rationalist argues that the universe is an orderly outcome of a rational, intentional process. It's not a random accident.
Well, let's play devil's advocate again, because when I hear be, and it is, I still picture the wizard. I picture God snapping his fingers and poof, a rabbit appears out of thin air. Is that what we're talking about? Does God just ignore physics?
No, and this is the critical reframe. If you take one thing away from this whole deep dive, let it be this. Kun is not the suspension of law. Kun is the initiation of law.
Initiation of law. Explain that for me.
Think of a computer programmer. They write a massive, incredibly complex simulation, millions of lines of code, physics engines, rendering rules, gravity simulators. When the programmer finally hits the run key, what happens?
The program starts, the simulation begins to play out.
Does the programmer have to reach inside the computer monitor and push the pixels around manually?
No, the code does the work.
Exactly. In this analogy, Kun is the command to run. It is the activation of the system. In Islamic theology, they call this Sunnat Allah, the way of God, or the wisdom of cause and effect.
So God doesn't bypass the Big Bang. He designs the Big Bang as the mechanism.
Precisely. The source explicitly says, God doesn't bypass intermediate steps. He designs them. The be is the uncaused cause. The becoming the Yakun is the evolution of the cosmos, the expansion, the cooling, the formation of hydrogen and helium, the coalescing of stars and galaxies, that whole 13.8 billion year process that it is.
That is beautiful. B is the trigger. It is the movie playing out.
And this completely solves the supposed conflict with science. Science studies the it is. Science studies the process. Theology studies the be, the origin.
This connects back to the physics we talked about earlier. The distinction between tut equals 0 and tit is greater than 0.
Yes. The poem in the source material uses this specific notation. For et is greater than 0, a single agent. Here is the core insight. T equals 0. That singularity, that boundary where math breaks down, where Smith got stuck, that is the boundary of the creator. That is the moment of the command.
And t greater than 0 is the timeline of the universe itself.
Right. T greater than 0 is the era of Yakun.
So science can explore everything from t equals 0.000001 onward, but t equals 0 itself that belongs to the architect.
Exactly. Creation isn't an interruption of the system. It is the launch of the system.
This really clarifies the God of the gaps issue. You know, people always say, oh, you just use God to explain what science hasn't explained yet. And as science grows, God shrinks.
Right. But this model says God isn't hiding in the gaps of our knowledge. God is the ground of the whole thing. He's not the one pushing the planets around individually with his invisible hands. He's the one who wrote the law of gravity that keeps them moving. Finding a scientific explanation isn't disproving God, it's just discovering how he did it.
Let's move to section 5. We need to talk about design, assembly, and this concept of the necessary being. Atheists often attack the watchmaker analogy. You know, William Paley's watch. If you find a watch on a beach, you assume a watchmaker because of its complexity.
Right. And strictly speaking, the atheists are right to attack that specific analogy. It has a structural flaw.
What's the flaw?
It's the assembly fallacy, atheists say. Look, a watch needs an assembler because it is made of parts that existed before the watch. The metal, the glass, the gears, they were lying around in the universe and someone put them together. But the universe is the parts. It's the totality of space-time. There's nothing outside of it to grab and assemble.
So you can't compare building a car or a watch to creating the cosmos.
That's their argument. And honestly, it's fair. But the Islamic and rationalist counter is very sharp here. They shift the focus entirely from assembly to contingency.
We used that word earlier. Define contingency for us again.
Contingency simply means it could have been different. Think about the speed of light, or the strength of gravity, or the mass of an electron.
These are the fundamental constants of nature.
Right. Is there any logical reason why gravity had to be exactly as strong as it is?
Yeah,
Could it have been a little stronger?
I assume so.
Could it have been a little weaker?
Sure, mathematically.
But if it were slightly different, even by a fraction of a percent, stars wouldn't form, or they would burn out in a week, or atoms wouldn't hold together at all.
We wouldn't be here.
Correct. But the philosophical point is, the universe is a collection of specific choices, specific values. The fact that it is this way and not that way implies a selection.
And a selection implies a selector.
Exactly. Even if it wasn't assembled like a Lego set from pre-existing parts, the fact that it has a specific, highly tuned nature means it was determined.
The Quran touches on this cosmology, doesn't it? The source mentions some verses that sound surprisingly modern when you read them through this lens.
It does. There's a verse in Surah Luqman, verse 10, that says, He created the heavens without pillars that you see.
Without pillars. I've always loved that image. It's very poetic.
It is. Ancient people thought the sky was a heavy dome. They thought it needed mountains or actual physical pillars to hold it up. The Quran corrects this. It says there are no visible supports. Rationalists interpret this as the invisible forces, gravity, dark matter, that hold the structure of the galaxy together. It's a dynamic tension, not a static building resting on columns.
And there's another one about the Big Bang, right?
Yes. Surah Al-Anbiya, verse 30. Have not those who disbelieve known that the heavens and the earth were of one piece? Then we parted them.
Of one piece, then we parted them. That sounds suspiciously like the singularity and the subsequent expansion.
It does. A closed-up mass that is split asunder. And the argument from the source here is that these verses describe a deliberate separation, a specific event with direction. We split them. That's an action. That implies an agent.
So if the universe is contingent, if it's a specific splitting that could have gone differently but went exactly this way, then the cause must be non-contingent.
Exactly. This is where we derive the attributes of God purely rationally. We aren't just reading a list from a holy book. We are deducing what the cause must be based on the nature of the effect. If the universe is the possible, the cause must be the necessary.
Walk us through the attributes. What must this cause look like?
1, it must be uncaused, to stop the infinite regress we talked about with the dominoes. 2, it must be timeless and spaceless, because it created time and space, so it obviously can't be trapped inside them. 3, and this is the big one, it must be volitional. It must have a will.
Why does it need a will? Why can't it just be a mindless force, like a supergravity or some quantum field?
Because of the eternal cause, temporal effect problem.
Explain that.
Imagine a heavy bowling ball resting on a soft cushion. The ball is the cause of the indentation in the cushion. If the ball has been resting there forever, how long has the indentation been there? Right. If the cause is eternal, the effect is eternal. Mechanical causes can't wait. If the gravity is there, the rock falls immediately. But the universe isn't eternal. We established that with the entropy argument. It began 13.8 billion years ago. The effect is temporal.
So how do you get a temporary effect from an eternal cause?
The only way you cross that bridge is if the cause chose to act. If I am sitting in a chair forever, I can choose to stand up at a specific moment. My will breaks the deadlock. A mechanical force cannot choose to delay its effect. Only an agent can choose.
That is heavy. So the very fact that the universe has an age that it isn't infinite implies the creator is a person, or at least has personality, agency.
It implies agency. It implies volition. And this connects directly to the Quranic names mentioned in the source. Al-Khaliq, the creator. Al-Qayyum, the self-subsisting. As-Samad, the self-sufficient. These aren't just religious praise titles. They are precise philosophical descriptions of a necessary being.
We are heading into the synthesis now. We need to stack these two models side by side and look at what we've learned from this deep dive. On the left, we have Model A, Quentin Smith's atheistic cosmology.
The half-open interval. An infinite internal regress. The universe is a brute fact. It just is. It's an abstract sequence of numbers getting smaller forever, no agency, no purpose.
And on the right, Model B, the rationalist and Islamic model.
A finite temporal origin. T is greater than 0. Initiated by a transcendent will, the B, unfolding through precise, designed laws, architectural justice.
And we still have that one nagging question from the atheist, conceptual tension. We touched on it, but let's nail it down completely. Who created God? If we say everything needs a cause, why is God exempt?
We resolve it by correcting the definition. The premise isn't everything needs a cause. That's a straw man argument. The actual philosophical premise is everything that begins to exist needs a cause, or everything contingent needs a cause.
And God, by definition,
did not begin to exist. God is not contingent. He is the ground of being. To ask what caused the uncaused cause is a category error. It's like asking what is north of the North Pole, or which bachelor is married. The question contradicts itself.
we go back to the author analogy.
Yes, the laws of causality, time, before, after, apply to the characters inside the book. They are bound by the plot. The author is not bound by the timeline of the characters. To ask who wrote the author is to mistake the author for a character. God is outside the system. The laws of the system apply to the things he created, not to him.
So it's not special pleading, it's a fundamental categorization distinction. You don't ask who baked the baker.
Exactly. The baker's not a loaf of bread.
Man. We have covered a lot of ground today. We started with the dominoes falling forever in the dark. We ended with a command that launched a system of light and law.
It's a journey from blind chance to architectural justice.
As we wrap up, I want to revisit that soundscape we talked about at the beginning, the cosmic riddle, that pulsing mystery. The source leaves us with a provocative thought about the becoming, the Yakoon.
This is what really sticks with me. If we accept the rationalist view, we are currently living in the Yakoon. We are in the it is phase. The command to be happened. But the result is still unfolding right now.
The universe is still expanding.
The expansion of the universe, the flow of time, the fusion of the sun, the firing of neurons in your brain right now, it's all part of the unfolding of that singular sustaining command.
That changes how you see yourself, doesn't it?
Completely. In the atheist model, you are a random accident of a self-looping math equation. You are a domino that fell because the previous domino fell, ad infinitum. You are a brute fact. In the rationalist model, you are the direct, ongoing result of a sustaining command. The universe isn't a wind-up clock that God abandoned. The Yakoon implies a continuous sustaining. Al-Qayyum, the one who sustains existence. If he looked away, the dominoes would stop falling.
So here is the final provocative thought for you, the listener, to mull over. Look around you. Look at the complexity of your own hand, or the stars if you can see them tonight. Does the universe look like a closed loop to you, a sealed room with no doors, just echoing numbers? Or does it look like a building that is still under construction, supported by invisible pillars?
Are we an accident of math? Or are we the echo of a command?
That's the riddle. And the answer might just change everything. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
Keep thinking.
See you next time.